It was 1976. A tired hospital janitor named Carl Jenkins was mopping the hallway after midnight, humming "Can't Help Falling in Love" to himself, when a deep, familiar voice joined in from behind. He froze. The man in the leather jacket wasn't a patient. It wasn't a visitor either. It was Elvis Presley himself. December 1976. St. Mary's Hospital, Memphis, Tennessee. The clock above the nurse's station read 12:07 a.m. The world outside was cold, wrapped in the kind of silence that only winter could make. Carl Jenkins pushed his old mop bucket down the east corridor, humming softly to keep himself awake. The floor smelled of lemon cleaner and old dreams. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead like tired stars. He was 47, with kind eyes and hands that never stopped working. No one really noticed him, just the quiet man who made the hallways shine. But when the building fell silent, Carl's voice came alive. He sang the way he wished life had treated him, honest, warm, and aching. A nurse named Linda Hayes passed by, clutching a clipboard. "You sound just like him, Carl," she said with a smile. Carl chuckled. "If only the king heard me." His voice echoed down the empty hall, fading into the hum of the vents. The city outside slept, but Memphis still carried his name everywhere, Elvis Presley. His posters covered record stores. His songs played through diner jukeboxes. His concerts filled every newspaper headline. Carl paused by a window, watching the blinking red lights from Graceland's direction. He whispered, "Guess some men never stop shining." Linda's radio crackled from down the hall. A deep voice from the security desk broke through the static. "VIP check-in through the east entrance. Keep this wing clear." Carl frowned. VIP check-in? At midnight, he shrugged and kept mopping. Hospitals always had their secrets. Celebrities, donors, or broken souls needing rest. But that night felt different. The air grew heavier, almost charged. The faint smell of cologne, rich, familiar, hung in the air like a ghost. Carl stopped humming. For a second, he thought he heard footsteps echoing in rhythm with his own song. Slow, steady, deliberate. He turned around. The hallway was empty. His heart beat faster, though he didn't know why. Maybe it was just another night, another shift. But something inside him whispered that something rare was about to happen. He looked down at his reflection in the polished floor, his mop still dripping, and quietly began to sing again. "Wise men say only fools rush in." The sound rolled through the corridor like a prayer. Sometimes the world tests how long you can sing before someone hears you. What would you do if your song, meant for no one, suddenly found its way to the person who inspired it? Carl didn't know it yet, but his song had just reached the right ears. The next night, word floated quietly through the hospital like cigarette smoke. "Elvis Presley's been admitted for exhaustion," whispered a nurse near the elevator. Nobody said it too loud, but everyone knew. Memphis always knew. Carl started his shift at 11:45 p.m., pushing the same mop bucket down the same dim hallway. The floor shone like a mirror under the harsh fluorescent light. But something about that night felt charged, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The air was thick with cologne and quiet rumors. Linda passed him near the supply closet, whispering, "Don't go near the east wing. They said he's resting there." Carl just nodded. Wouldn't dream of it. But when he reached that same hallway, something pulled him there anyway. Maybe curiosity, maybe fate. He dipped the mop, humming without thinking. "Love me tender, love me true." Then, another voice joined in. Low, smooth, effortless. It wrapped around Carl's melody like velvet. Carl froze. The bucket water stilled. The hum of the ceiling lights seemed to fade into nothing. He turned slowly toward the sound. A tall man stood by the doorway, half hidden by shadows. Dark jacket, cane, sunglasses despite the hour. Carl's breath caught in his chest. "Elvis." The man smiled, voice soft. "Mind if I sing with you, son?" Carl's mouth opened, but no words came out. He just nodded, hands trembling on the mop handle. Together, their voices filled the hallway. Two worlds colliding, the man who sang to the world, and the man who sang to the walls. The echo of their duet rolled through the corridor like thunder wrapped in honey. A nurse passing by stopped dead in her tracks. Behind a half-closed door, someone whispered, "That can't be real." But it was. December 14th, 1976. St. Mary's East Wing. The janitor and the king sang under flickering light while the city slept. When the last note faded, Elvis chuckled softly. "You got soul, son. Don't lose that." Carl couldn't speak. He just smiled, eyes wet, like a man seeing a miracle and trying not to blink. The hallway lights flickered once. Then again. A voice from somewhere behind the door whispered, "Did you get that on tape?" But no one had. Some moments live only once. Carl leaned on his mop handle as Elvis tipped his head. "You take care of this place, Carl. Feels peaceful here." Carl nodded. "Yes, sir." Then Elvis was gone, walking slowly toward the elevator, cane tapping rhythm like a fading drumbeat. The hall went quiet again, too quiet. Carl stared at the empty space, heart pounding. Had it really happened? He pressed a hand to his chest, still feeling the vibration of that voice. Some things you don't need proof for. You just know. What would you have done if your hero walked straight into your song? Carl whispered to the empty hallway, "Thank you, sir." And from somewhere down the corridor, faint and distant, came a final echo, "You're welcome." Carl couldn't sleep after that night. He replayed the sound in his head. The way Elvis's voice had filled that narrow corridor, the warmth in it, the sadness behind the smile. By the next evening, rumors were flying. Someone claimed they'd seen the king in the staff cafeteria. Another said he'd slipped out at dawn under a different name. But Carl didn't care about gossip. He just wanted to know if it had been real. 11:57 p.m. The janitor clocked in, same hallway, same bucket, same quiet hum. Halfway through his shift, a security guard named Benny walked by and nodded. "You still singing tonight, Carl?" Carl smiled faintly. "Not unless someone joins me again." Benny laughed. "Yeah, sure. Maybe Sinatra next time." Then he was gone. Minutes later, Carl turned the corner toward the East Wing break room. The faint click of a cane echoed down the hall. Carl stopped breathing. A voice followed. "Coffee still hot in this place?" He turned. There he was, Elvis Presley. No bodyguards this time. Just him. A little paler, a little slower, but still carrying that quiet fire in his eyes. Carl blinked. "Mr. Presley, sir, you shouldn't be out of your room." Elvis smiled. "Doc says I need rest. He didn't say where I had to find it." They both laughed. Just two men in the middle of the night, sneaking coffee like old friends. The machine hissed and sputtered as Carl filled 2 cups. The smell of burnt grounds and sugar filled the air. Elvis sat down, rubbing his wrist. "Been running too hard," he said softly. "Shows, travel, people asking for pieces of you till there's nothing left." Carl listened, unsure if he should speak. "I've been cleanin' floors here 20 years, he said finally. "Ain't much fame in that either." Elvis chuckled, looking up. "Maybe not, but you still got your piece." Carl hesitated. "You really think so?" Elvis leaned forward. "Peace ain't about who knows your name. It's about whether you can sit in silence and still like who you are." That line hit Carl harder than he expected. He stared at his reflection in the coffee cup. Just a tired man who sang when no one was listening. Outside, thunder rolled over Memphis. The hospital windows rattled softly. Elvis removed his sunglasses, rubbing his temples. He looked older than the posters, more human than the legend. "You sing good, Carl," he said quietly. "You reminded me what it used to feel like before all this." Carl swallowed. "Guess we both got different kinds of stages." Silence fell again, thick and gentle. Then Elvis reached into his pocket and placed something on the table. A small gold cufflink. Blue stone center. The letters EP engraved in the corner. Carl blinked, confused. "What's this?" Elvis smiled. "A reminder. For the song you gave me." Carl shook his head. "Sir, I can't take that." Elvis interrupted softly. "You can. You earned it." The air felt heavier. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping on the glass like applause from somewhere far away. Carl turned the cufflink over in his palm. Felt warm, almost alive. In that moment, he realized he wasn't invisible anymore. He looked up to say thank you, but Elvis was already standing. "I've got to go," he said gently. "Keep singing, son. Don't ever stop." Carl wanted to ask where he was headed, but all he could say was, "You too, Mr. Presley." Elvis smiled. "That's the plan." He left the break room, cane tapping rhythm into the empty hallway. Carl sat there long after the sound faded, staring at the cufflink shining under the flickering light. Some gifts don't come wrapped in boxes. They come in moments you never saw coming. And that night, Carl didn't know he was holding his last one. Carl held the cufflink in his hand long after Elvis left. It gleamed under the fluorescent lights, small, heavy, and impossibly real. He turned it over, tracing the initials with his thumb. Ippy. The blue stone caught the light like a drop of sky. When Linda Hayes came in for the morning shift, she found him sitting there, still holding it. "Carl, you okay?" she asked softly. He nodded, smiling through disbelief. "He gave it to me." "Who?" Carl just whispered. "Elvis." She blinked. "You mean the Elvis?" Carl laughed, a little shakily. "Ain't no other one, is there?" He slipped the cufflink into his shirt pocket, heart pounding. That morning, a black limousine rolled quietly out of the hospital's side entrance. No fanfare, no cameras, just silence. Elvis had checked out early. Carl stood by the window watching the taillights disappear. "Guess that's goodbye," he murmured. Days turned into weeks. The cufflink stayed pinned to the inside of his locker door, right next to a faded photo of his late wife. He'd take it down every night before mopping, hold it close, and whisper, "You told me to keep singing," and he did. Every shift, every lonely hallway. His voice echoed against tile and time. One night, Linda stopped by the janitor's closet. "You really think he'll come back?" she asked gently. Carl smiled, but his eyes looked far away. "No, but I think he left something behind." February came with cold rain and heavy clouds. Carl worked through it all, same bucket, same songs, same quiet faith. Then, August 16th, 1977. Carl was polishing the floor outside the nurse's station when he heard the radio static. The announcer's voice cracked with disbelief. "Breaking news! Elvis Presley has been found dead at Graceland." Carl froze. The mop slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a hollow thud. The world felt suddenly smaller. He walked slowly to his locker, opened the door, and stared at the gold cufflink glinting in the half-light. For a long time he didn't move, didn't cry, didn't breathe. Linda found him hours later, sitting on the bench, eyes red, cufflink in his palm. "He told me to keep singing," he said softly. That night, Carl went to the empty hospital chapel. The air smelled of candle wax and dust. He knelt by the front pew and began to sing Amazing Grace. His voice cracked on every line, but it carried something beautiful, something raw. Down the hall, a few nurses stopped to listen. Someone whispered, "That's the janitor." Another replied, "No, that's the song." Carl finished the last verse and whispered into the silence, "Rest easy, sir." The chapel light flickered once, then twice. He took it as a sign, because sometimes promises echo louder than goodbyes. August 16th, 1977, 3:10 p.m. The radio behind the janitor's closet door was whispering static when the announcer's voice cracked. "Elvis Presley dead at Graceland." Carl froze. The mop slipped from his fingers, water spreading like a mirror across the tile. For a moment, even the hospital seemed to stop breathing. He walked to his locker and opened it slowly. The gold cufflink caught the dim light. Pinned beside it was a handwritten note from Linda. "Keep singing, Carl." He touched the cufflink with shaking hands. "You told me to," he whispered. Outside the window, Memphis clouds hung low and heavy. Graceland was only a few miles away, but it might as well have been another world. Carl stepped into the empty corridor. The air smelled of disinfectant and rain. Every step echoed louder than the last. He made his way to the small hospital chapel. The wooden door creaked open. No one else was there. He stood under the stained glass light and began to sing Amazing Grace. His voice trembled, but he kept going. Line after line, the sound filled every corner of that little room. One by one, nurses drifted in. Orderlies stood in the back. Even the night security guard, Benny, slipped through the door and bowed his head. No one spoke. No one moved. They just listened. When Carl reached the last verse, his voice cracked, and something inside the room shifted. Some cried. Some smiled through tears. He whispered, "That one's for you, Mr. Presley." Later, when the sun came up, Linda found him still sitting in the pew. "You all right?" she asked. Carl nodded. "Just keeping my promise." By noon, word had spread through every floor. The janitor sang for the king. A local reporter named Paul Dorsey heard the story from a nurse and came that same afternoon. He found Carl still mopping the same hallway. "Mind if I write about you?" Paul asked. Carl shrugged. "Ain't much to tell. Just a song." But the next morning, the headline in the Memphis Gazette read, "The janitor who sang for the king." People left flowers near his cart. Someone taped a small photograph of Elvis to the wall. Carl didn't say much. He just kept working, humming the melody that had started it all. Because sometimes, the quietest voices carry the loudest echoes. Weeks passed. The story of the janitor who sang for the king spread quietly through Memphis. Nobody knew how the newspapers found out. But by September, strangers were calling the hospital asking for the hallway where it happened. Carl didn't understand it. He wasn't famous. He didn't even own a suit. But one night, when he walked into work, he noticed something that stopped him cold. A single white flower sat on his mop cart. Tucked beneath it, a small note written in looping script. "Thank you for keeping his spirit alive." He looked around, but no one was there. Soon, more flowers appeared. Fans left scarves, photos, even ticket stubs from old concerts. They called it the hallway shrine. Linda shook her head, smiling softly. "Looks like you started something, Carl." He laughed, embarrassed. "I just sang a song." But deep down, he knew it was more. In December 1977, a small plaque appeared on the East Corridor wall. Here, a janitor sang with the king, December 1976. No ceremony, no press. Just a quiet thank you from the hospital staff. Every Friday night, Carl still sang as he worked, his voice floating through the empty halls. Some nurses recorded him on a small cassette player, calling the tape the hallway sessions. 5 years later, 1982, Memphis radio station WMC aired a short feature about the janitor. They played that tape live, static and all. Listeners pulled over in traffic to hear it. Some cried. Some called the station to ask if the janitor was still alive. He was. Still cleaning, still singing. One evening, Carl got a letter addressed only to the man who sang with Elvis. Inside, a fan from Japan had written, "Your voice helped me forgive my father. He loved Elvis too." Carl read it 3 times before tucking it carefully beside the cufflink. He never wrote back. Didn't know how, but he smiled every time he saw that letter. Sometimes the world notices you long after you stop asking for it. As years rolled on, more visitors came. Some just stood silently in the hallway, heads bowed. Others pressed their palms to the plaque as if it were sacred. Carl never charged a dime, never signed a photo. He'd only say, "I just sang what was in my heart." Late one night, as he locked his closet, Linda asked, "You ever think about retiring?" He looked down the long corridor where it all began. The air hummed with memory. "Not yet," he said. "There's still music here." And if you listened closely, you could almost hear another voice beside his, soft, steady, familiar, singing harmony from somewhere just beyond the light. By the 1990s, Carl's hair had turned silver. His back bent a little lower, but he still pushed the same mop cart down the same hallway every night. The gold cufflink stayed pinned inside his locker, still shining, still waiting. In August 1991, after 40 years of service, he finally retired. The hospital threw a small party in the cafeteria, paper cups, sheet cake, and laughter. Linda hugged him tightly. "You kept this place alive, Carl," she said. He smiled. "Just tried to keep it clean." After he left, the hospital stayed quiet without him. But every August 16th, Elvis Week, people still came to that east hallway. Fans, nurses, even young janitors who'd heard the story. They brought flowers, sang softly, and left notes under the plaque. "You reminded us what real singing sounds like." In 2004, when Carl passed away, the hospital chapel filled beyond capacity. Old staff, local fans, even a few Elvis tribute singers came in costume. Linda, now gray-haired herself, stepped to the front and began to sing, "Can't Help Falling in Love." Her voice trembled. Halfway through the song, the lights flickered once. Then again, people gasped softly, and for one small moment, everyone swore they heard another voice joining hers. Low, familiar, warm. Some smiled through tears. Others just closed their eyes. After the service, the cufflink was placed in a small glass case by the plaque. The inscription read, "For the man who kept the song alive." Today, if you walk those halls late at night, some say you can still hear faint humming near the East Wing. Maybe legends never leave us. Maybe they just find new voices to sing through. Because a man who believed no one could hear him once sang a song, and the world is still listening. If the story touched you, share it with someone who still believes their voice doesn't matter. Sometimes the smallest song can echo for generations. Were you or someone you love ever inspired by Elvis's music? Tell your story in the comments, and keep the music alive.